Hello, everyone. Welcome to another great online webinar session. I would like to actually say good morning to many of our American friends joining. We've got Mark Christopoulos, who is going to be the moderator of the event. And I've got the main speaker, Ivan Kuganer, who is joining us. He is joining us from France. And then I've got Mark from the US. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are. Hello, and thank you for accepting the invitation. Lovely gentlemen.
Good day. Hey, Katie, glad to be here.
Thank you.
Very good. So I guess I get going. So hello, everybody. So the topic of today is sharing some experience we've had at Merck, moving from a top-down process for portfolio management to a bottom-up process. And I will spend much more time talking about the bottom-up process, which is the process we implemented in 2012, so that has been in place for the past 9 years. And describe it and how we do it. It's more a sharing of experience than a lecture in any shape, way, or form. And then I'll share with you some of the learnings, and I hope we can engage in a couple of questions and answers. So on the topics, I will follow this plan. We'll talk a little bit about the process overview, some process details, strategic baselining, pipeline design, pipeline execution. This is how we split it in pieces, the key meetings, the timelines, deliverables, and races. And then we'll finish on lesson learned. Prior to 2012, we had what we call the old model here in the slide on the left side, which was the portfolio management, was a top-down function where split into two sub-functions. One was portfolio management per se, and one was portfolio evaluation. This team was operating, it was a team of about 20 people operating like an audit function, I would say. So they would go around and would say, it's time to evaluate the portfolio. We would do it once a year with the help sometime from an external vendor, go around, collect the information directly from the teams, make our own assumptions when we didn't have the information, and then add a layer of personal touch in terms of evaluation, and then run the models, run the analysis, come to the conclusions. And that was done solely with the team, within the team, with the help of an external vendor, and then reported back to top management, the executive committee. We decided in 2012, 2013, implementation in 2013 to change the model to a bottom-up model that would involve the teams much more actively, because they would provide all the inputs to the portfolio management team. So one of the results of that is that the burden of work was switched from the global portfolio management team to the teams themselves. So there was a first step of revision of process to include each team's research, development, commercial teams input, financial teams input, market access and pricing teams input, that would be collected into a templated system. And then from this bottom-up collection of assumptions, then the portfolio management team runs the models, runs the analytics, and then presents the conclusions. All this process is done always in full collaboration, step by step, with the research, development, commercial, market access and pricing, competitive intelligence teams. So there's a clear, much more collaboration in this new process that we implemented nearly 10 years ago. So as it stands today, I would say there's three major blocks. And as you can see here on the timeline, I would say most of the activities of data collection, data updates, data analytics, data presentation take place between October and I would say March. Then, of course, you have a phase of synchronization, what we call a synchronization of SD financials and portfolio review, because this process, and we'll see it in more details, is totally synchronized with the strategy development process as well as the long-term financial plans. That was also another objective of this change, is to fully integrate that into one process so that there's no duplication of work or limited duplication of work, and certainly full alignment with whatever financials are communicated to the executive committees and the board, and the same timing as the strategy as it was developed and communicated to top management and the board. Another objective was also to synchronize the strategy finalization with some kind of portfolio prioritization and portfolio plans. So, and that takes me to the third piece, which is communication and implementation of portfolio decisions. And as you can see here, it's a logical piece. I have to say, over the 9 years that we've had this process, I would say step 1 and 2 are quite easy to implement. Step 3 is much more challenging, or has been much more challenging for us. It's easy to engage top management and all the teams from top to bottom and bottom to top in a two-way communication, until you have to start implementing the decisions. And we've been a little bit light and slow to translate strategy into actionable decisions in a consistent way. And we'll talk to that later. So this year, and more specifically, we decided to really break it down into three parts. The first one is what we call the strategic baselining, which is really downloading information from the teams into our top executives, so that once we start engaging the second piece, which is strategy pipeline design, that fits the strategy as it's been defined by the executives, they have a common understanding at all levels of the situation of the pipeline, the details of the projects and the programs, and that we've addressed all the questions that they had in mind up front, so that once they engage in these strategic conversations, they have a very good, as I said, common understanding and high understanding of the details and what's important to know about each pipeline projects. Then we move into a second phase, which is much more, so the first phase is really an information phase. The second one is much more a design phase in sync with the overall company strategy design, but this piece being focused on the pipeline design, which is only a subset of the company and the division strategic design. There we conveyed, and we had the opportunity to convey experts to challenge us on our assumptions regarding the pipeline. So from the detail level, like assumptions in terms of forecast and probability of success, or R&D cost, or development design, to strategic decisions that we had in mind in terms of indication of focus, or specific TA therapeutic areas engagement, or effort. So that is a really important phase, I think, to ensure that you challenge yourself with external people and not be very, very self-centered in that phase. Integrate pipeline insight with healthcare strategic scenarios. We have a lot of scenario-based planning at Merck. I think that helps us a lot make things real. We have operated in the past from a pure probabilistic approach, and I think the scenario-based approach is a much more appropriate approach to pipeline narrative development. It's easier to develop a true story of the pipeline you want to see and the pipeline you want to support if you develop it around scenarios. And in reality, life is not about 30% success. An experiment is always either positive or negative. So we've been transitioning from a pure probabilistic approach to a much more scenario-based approach when it comes to scenario planning and strategy planning. The last point I want to make, and this is the third bullet here, we've paid more attention recently on making sure that we allocate the appropriate resources at the high level, and that our top management is involved in this high level resource allocation in the different segments of the pipeline, from research, well, discovery to research to development and to lifecycle management. Pay more attention on, as well as the allocation between the different therapeutic areas. I think there has been over time a tendency to favor projects that pay back quicker than the ones that pay back later. And so if you don't pay too much attention to it, you might under-resource your discovery. Discovery tends to be on their own, but research, you under-resource research in favor of late development, which I think is a mistake in the long run. But the thing is that you don't pay the price right away. You pay the price much later than the road. And then the third piece, which I think that the one that's most overlooked everywhere, is pipeline execution. I think that we do execute pipeline, but it's pipeline execution within a strategy execution. And I think companies are very good at taking decisions, executing decisions. Everybody does it pretty well. What's really difficult is to make sure that these decisions are in an exact execution of your strategy, and linking the two, that you don't make the decisions either on a first come, first serve, who has the loudest voice, but much more based on what strategy you want to execute and what are your critical milestones to execute this strategy. And I think that's at least at Merck, that's something we've been struggling with. We're good at having the pet projects move fast and the decision favor these. We don't always make sure that we operate within this strategic corridor that we've defined during the strategic framework. So one way to get there, I think it's really to define and predefine these scenarios I've been talking about. And the fact that we move now into a more scenario-based strategic planning, because we have these scenarios, and because these scenarios include very detailed set of decisions we have to make to apply scenario A or scenario B or scenario C. And because these scenarios are fully fleshed out with what if situations, and because they're endorsed, then it's easier to make sure that they get executed, because now you have an alignment top down and bottom up in what's going to happen if upfront. This is publicized, everybody knows what to expect, and the decision is taken a priori instead of a posteriori. So, and I think that helps remove a lot of the tension. If you wait for data to then make a decision, if you have the plan already in place and you know when the data of the clinical experiments come, what you'll do next, it's much easier to execute that than just revisiting at the time when these data become available. The third point on this part 3 of the bottom up is really to provide, and that's where you close the loop, is that bottom up, you provide progress report to what we call the investment board here, which is the body that endorses or make decision for investments for the pipeline. So you need also this in this bottom up, because you ask so much from the teams to provide you with a lot of information. You have to make sure that you feed them back, and then they have a chance to feed back to the top management on the progress that they execute.
Yvonne, can I ask a
Yes.
quick question here?
Yeah, of course.
Yes,
sure. Please.
Really great, robust discussion in terms of the journey that you and your organization went through. I just wanted to ask you around the scenario management, bringing scenarios into the process, because I know a lot of our practitioners are interested, and some of us are applying scenarios. I myself am trying to, for our company, it's relatively small. We're trying to introduce using scenarios in our process. For you, the journey that Merck went under to transition from more tops down to more bottoms up was applying the scenario regimen. Was that part of the journey? Was always expected to be part of the journey, or did that just come? That was a new add-in.
Yeah, it's a new add-in, and it's really a new add-in this year, to be honest.
Okay.
So I don't have much to say about it. We've tried it. So we've developed scenarios for the past 3 years on specific projects, specifically ones that are partnered, for example. We have some big partnerships. And the best way to operate within your partnerships when you have alliances is to plan more, right? Because you have two parties to align. So the more parties you have to align, the more complex it gets, the more planning is required. And because you have to do much more planning, we've been doing much more scenarios, right? And scenario planning, because number one, we wanted to understand and work in the shoes of our partner to understand them and have healthy alliances. Yeah. And then, of course, it's better to come prepared when you go to these decision makings, because it's not all about you, it's also all about the other party. So you have to make sure that you have all your plans in, because it's a negotiation somewhere. And so you need to be ready for this. So no, it's come over time. And because we've suffered from a lack of scenario planning, I think, and because it was purely probabilistic. The only ones who were doing scenario planning in our company were the budgeting team, the R&D budgeting team. They've always operated with a scenario-based planning on their side, because they need to put numbers. So they have to say, okay, I put that one in, I put that one out, I put this one. You see what I mean? They can't put 30% of a project. They have to put in or out. So they've always challenged us, and so that's how we got there. Actually, to at the end, we feel better by doing it that way, because now we can align all the pieces together.
So a question
as well as please.
That's awesome. Very informative. Thank you. A question came in on this topic, so I'll go ahead and pick that one up. Can you share a little bit? I know this is the first year you guys are doing it. You're still learning as you're going, but Vladimir is interested in understanding kind of what time range are you applying for your scenarios? Are they just for the fiscal year, or do they go beyond?
Yes. So for scenario planning, that's a very good question, actually. We allow ourselves for 18 months. I think it's very difficult to do scenario, and we're not a huge company, we're mid-sized pharma, we are conglomerate, mid-sized pharma. And so it's clear that for us, scenario planning, we don't have that many projects. We have about 70 projects altogether, but it gets very complex very quickly, because if you try to scenario plan and you put all the inflection points, and so you have to build your trees, right, with all the possible scenarios, very quickly you get lost and you lose everybody. So I strongly recommend limit your time, limit your number of projects, only focus on the major projects where it matters, it's going to move the needle. And so limit the number of decisions that you put on your scenario. So assume a certain number of things. On the small things, it doesn't matter. And only on the big stuff that's going to move you left or you move right from a strategic standpoint, these are the ones that you're going to build the nodes of your scenario, what if scenarios on.
That's excellent. That's excellent input. A question just came in from Joe that was kind of asking that exact question. He was saying, from his experience, your tree gets so big that you quickly just get lost in so many different possible outcomes that you end up in analysis paralysis in terms of so many.
That's ridiculous. Same experience. I totally agree. And we tried, right? Believe me, we thought, okay, let's do it. And a few years back we tried, and we stopped very, very quickly. It's so overwhelming. We lose everybody. We cannot handle so much information. The human brain cannot handle a tree that big. So now we've decided a long time ago, we will focus on 5 scenarios. That's what we limit to ourselves, 5 scenarios. Beyond that, you lose everybody.
That's awesome. Okay, so you kind of pick your big 5 scenarios that are kind of the ones that are really going to move the needle for the portfolio, one way or the other, for good or for bad. And you just, awesome. Okay.
And then for everything else, we do Monte Carlo, and Monte Carlo gives us the probabilistic, from a revenue standpoint, cost standpoint, Monte Carlo is the way to go for everything that's number driven.
Beautiful. Okay, thank you. I'll hand it back to you. Please continue. Thank you so much.
So I will, how much time do we have left, by the way, for the downloading of information? Because I want to adjust my time based on how much time we've left here.
Of course, we have, we normally have the session for 1 hour long. So
Yeah.
we've got another 30 minutes, I would say.
And
Okay,
we want to
so
allow
I'll make sure that I leave more time for questions. Yeah, just to
Yeah,
make
that'd
sure.
be good. Thank you, Yvonne.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I can skip that one. So what I will say, I will go into details of what kind of stuff we do in each of these blogs from a practical standpoint. So to make it more real, right? So on the strategic baselining, for example, we do all the assumptions updates. So I alluded to that. So it's TPP updates, probability of success updates, development plans updates, the market share and pricing assumptions updates. So all the forecasting updates. And then we do the external assessment of all these things. So we try to, it can be internal. And when I call external assessment, the external of the team that did it. Then we do quite what we call asset deep dive package. It's all the new stuff or the stuff that we think our top management doesn't know much about, that they should know more about. And then we run our what I call push button quantitative and qualitative analytics. So once we run the models and we have a push button, a set of data that are downloaded directly from our models that are standardized, including Monte Carlo. And then from there, we start mapping the 5 scenarios I was talking about, right? Toying with these big scenarios that we believe are the big scenarios that our top management should be aware of. And then, of course, when in strategic pipeline design, the design pipeline strategy based on selected healthcare strategic scenarios. So we present a few scenarios, then we check them with top management. We say, are these the ones that you want to see? And then we refine it, we engage them in conversation, and then they give us guidance that this is the healthcare strategy we want to implement. What do we need to do to be successful in implementing our strategy? So then we refine our scenarios. And then we finalize the pipeline strategic priorities. And then we have the pipeline execution around tactical ranking. So it's very important to do tactical ranking and prioritization for operating plan by segments. So operating plan is the next year budget. So this is where we start getting into the rubber hits the road for the teams, right? So it's bottom up and then it's top down, right? And then we come back and then we do bottom up again. We go to the teams and we ask them, okay, you have 100, you told us you need 120. Okay, we put the red line at 100. So what do you put first with the 100 you can finance? Which are the ones you put on the top of the line? And then we go back bottom up and we go back to top management, and then we wrap it up all together. We do it at the TA level, and then at the team level, then the TA level, then at the portfolio level, to define which ones we're going to fund and which ones we're not going to fund. And then the end of it is when the finalization of the budget and the plans and the scenarios happen by the end of the year. So I'm not going to go into details here, but every piece of information that we put together, so non-financial value assessment, this is what we do pre-proof of concept. For this, we have a MODA tool, which is a standard multiple objective decision analysis tool. It's a scoring mechanism for pre-POC, pre-proof of concept assets. So typically up to phase 2A, we don't do financial models. We only do financial models when we have proof of concept with full forecast, P&L, and financial models. I can go very quickly. Now, we do a piece that I think is very important, which is optimization and strategy optimization, as well as plan optimization. And that's something that's very difficult to achieve, to be honest. And we are not there yet, but we are in the process of trying to be better at it. Optimization is, in fact, portfolio optimization is very complex to do because you have so many factors that come into play. You have politics, you have strategy, you have financials, and financials at so many levels, and everybody pet project in the middle of it. So what we start with is a strategic input. So for us, we're very disciplined that we have an umbrella strategy at the group level, at the healthcare level, at the franchise level, at the therapeutic area level. So we have what we call disease maps and tumor strategies and so on and so forth. Then we work with resources, right? Very quickly, we say, okay, can we pay for it? What's the financial framework? what kind of people do we have? Do we have the necessary capabilities? We have heat maps on FTEs and plans. So we have a system that use Tableau, actually, a capability that we price in terms of money and people and resources and specialties very quickly. And there we see where we have areas of green and areas of red. When we don't have the capabilities, we need to hire them or reprioritize or so on and so forth. Then we do that against the value, opportunity to risk to uncertainty. That's our piece. Ranking and prioritization, that's the portfolio management piece. We come with the tools. We say, these are the best ones. These are the ones that give you the best opportunity to risk to uncertainty ratio. And these are the ones you should pursue in this order to maximize. And then we balance with the priorities of the strategy at the asset level, at the franchise level, at the therapeutic area level, to ensure pipeline sustainability in the short and the long term. We look at the geographical impact. We look at the, the different other, as I said, it's very complex. It's not, it's very difficult for process. And if somebody has the solution for that one, to put it linear instead of iterative, as I showed there, I'm a taker, because I've not found the solution yet. So big piece for me, this is where everybody really adds value, and portfolio management really adds value in this optimization process. I will skip that one. Very important when you start putting all that together, because I said it's very interactive, is you need to plan your meetings very much ahead, so that your meetings are going to happen at the time where you need this alignment, because you're going to have to go back to the teams and come back. And portfolio management has to work with multiple teams. And you see here, we have GSD, which is Global Strategy Development Team. We have HEC, which is the Executive Committee. IB is the Investment Board, which is more focused on the pipeline, and the finance teams. The last piece I wanted to talk about is the races. You absolutely need to define your races. If you don't, nobody knows what is expected from who. So we are very process oriented when it comes to races. We plan, we map who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's will be informed. We do it upfront. We align it upfront to ensure that there's no surprise for the teams when it comes the time of execution, that they wouldn't know what expected from them. They know when will come to them. They know what they need to provide, when they need to provide it, in which format they need to provide it, and that has worked for us for the past 9 years since we've been working bottom up. That's worked really, really well for us. So I very quickly to show it exists and it's real. And then the critical learnings here. So I don't know, I want to pause 1 second, maybe Mark, before I go into the learnings. Do you have any questions with what I just presented?
Sure, yeah, I've got a question, and we've got a couple questions that come in. I'll work my way backwards. So thank you, Yvonne. If we could talk about kind of the resource allocation step, and maybe touch on your optimization step, that your slide that had the big 1, 2, 3, that iterative process. If we could touch upon that a little bit. It sounds like you have the advantage in that you are sitting at truly a strategic portfolio department, and you're able to work across all the different therapeutic areas, divisions across Merck, which is truly great. In terms of the challenges there, my thinking is, having done some work in that space, that because you have so many, you've got several different groups that are almost, I don't want to call them stovepipes, but they're different resource groups. I imagine it's a little bit difficult to you can't just move resources between the different therapeutic areas, right? And between the different divisions. So if one particular division has a group of projects that maybe those group of projects are suboptimal compared to another particular division, kind of how do you optimize that in terms of your prioritization?
It's a step-by-step approach. So we start with the small. So for example, we differentiate a project, which is an indication for a molecule, from a program, which is the molecule itself. So for example, and then the next level, we have the TA level, so the therapeutic area, And then we have the next level, which is the functional. So we do two things. We start at the project level and we ask people to come with their plans at the project level, and we ask for multiple plans for the same indication. So for one indication, we want to see multiple plans. So there we already narrow with the plan that the best plan that they have in mind with alternative possibility. Then we bring all this together and we go to the program level, which is the next level at the molecule level. So we put all the indication for one molecule into one, I would say, scenario-based map. We price it. We price it from a resource standpoint, and we do that at every level. These two levels have already. So what people do you need? What capabilities you need? What financials you need? And then we run the models and we have a good idea, and we already do a selection there. And then we go to the next level. And so we do it iteratively at each level. And each time we integrate a new thing, we do the optimization at that level to only come with something that's vetted, but that team to the next level. And so we split things between the main strategy and the buy ups and the buy downs. So you see, you go with the one that you selected, that's the best offer. And then you have your buy ups and your buy down. So in case you don't have as much money, where do you cut? In case you're given more money, what would you do with it? So by opening a little bit there, you have less frustration in the team. They're like, okay, I'm not limited. I still have hope that I can get more money. Yeah. Now, if I get cut, I already have an alignment from the team that they know where they're going to cut. And I progress that way up the food chain, if you wish. And so the next level is the TA level. We do very good. We are lucky because we have tools and governance bodies and process bodies to align across functions. That works really well. We have it at the research level. We have it at the development level. And then we have one body where we put commercial and R&D together to align on what they want. It's not easy. I'm not saying that's easy. And we only do it at the TA level, because before we always have the commercial lead with the program lead or the project lead who talk to each other. I'm not saying it's easy. Sometimes they disagree. We need to elevate to get some alignment on the main branch, right, of what they want, and the buy ups and the buy downs. Right. Because sometimes they don't agree. But we progress that way up. And so it's iterative at every level until we get a good plan that everybody has seen, is comfortable with buy ups and buy downs. And the fact that we have buy ups and buy downs, I think, helps people move forward, because they're like, okay, my buy up is still there, my buy down is still there. There's limited risk, kind of.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like you're almost running your process within sub portfolios within
yes, the therapeutic exactly.
Area. Yeah, correct. And the commercial lead and the program leads, they get together within that sub portfolio and they agree upon kind of, here's what the baseline is, here's what we're currently planning on funding, and here's already what's in flight. And then the buy ups and the buy downs allows them to kind of strut their stuff and explain where they could go if they could get additional resources, or for some reason they need to cut, how they would be impacted. So I can imagine that provides for a lot of buy-in, because the folks that are actually, they know the technology, know the therapeutic area best. They can kind of explain their unique situation for their sub portfolio. I think that makes a lot of sense.
And that only happens within the strategic framework that has already been aligned. So I can come back and say, this is out of strategy, guys. You can't come in and make it your main branch when it's out of strategy. So you have a lot of guidelines that happened before. As I said, we operate under a strategic umbrella. That helps as well.
That's really key, right? And that's extremely helpful that you have that robust strategic umbrella. I've been in organizations in the past where the strategic umbrella wasn't quite as robust. It was just kind of de facto understood. And it made for those sub-portfolio discussions, it made it very challenging because it wasn't truly clear kind of what is the strategy, what's our roadmap, right? So I
totally agree. And let's be honest, I'm describing here the best of the worlds. It's not easy every day. It's not perfect every day. And we have hiccups like everybody else. So let's be honest here too, right? People have pet projects, so things happen along the way. I'm not saying it's perfect, it's linear and it's all beautiful and everything is perfect, but at least it works overall.
That's how you keep your job, right? If it ran itself, they wouldn't need you.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
All right, we had a couple of good questions also earlier on here about if it's okay to talk about a little bit more detail about your Monte Carlo simulation.
Yep.
There's some interest in terms of what tool do you use and how do you manage all the interdependencies and
Yes.
the complexity. Can you
Yeah.
spend a little more time on that? Would you mind?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I can explain it's super simple. We run a minimum of 3 scenarios, high, base, low scenario per project. So I said we have about 70 projects. Each project has at least 3 scenarios, high, base, and a low scenario. The high, the base, low, we allocate, so in distribution of high, base, low. The high, base, low scenario are a combination of high, base, low TPP, high, base, low market environment. Do I make sense? I didn't lose too many. So it's 9, and out of 9 boxes, we bookend with 2 so that we cover 80 to 90% of the possible outcomes of our market environment or TPP. So that's the high, base, low. So once we have that, we have a weight for each high, base, low. You have a per project, the 70 projects that we have high, base, low for each. So now we probabilistically run these purely. It's a probabilistic on Excel if you wish. We don't use Excel, but you can run it on Excel. We have a software to run it on, but it's Crystal Ball we use. But you can use any software. I don't want to advertise for one in particular. We use Crystal Ball, but we could use Excel. You can use your own made up. You have plenty of. And so, because they all do the same thing, they take randomly your things. We are not very good today with interdependencies, to be honest, Mark. That's an area where we are weak. So all these scenarios are run independently. They are not linked one way or the other. I know we should. That's something we want to develop in the future. That's a weak point that I know we need to develop, but we're not there yet. So we hope that we can build in interdependencies. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It makes sense to me. Hopefully, Vladimir,
mathematically, it's very simple what we do. Yeah, in Monte Carlo.
Yeah. Other questions, folks? Anybody else out there with additional questions?
If not, I can go to the lesson learned, and then we can get there. Yeah.
Why don't you? Go ahead, Yvonne. Why don't you take us through the lessons learned, and that might spur some additional questions.
So the first one is that this model, the bottom-up model, only works if you have full support from top management, because it's very easy for the teams if they don't see that your CEO or your CFO or the head of R&D or the head of strategy is not behind it and appreciates the bottom-up process. You have no adherence to it, because it's a lot of work. I mean, asking teams to provide you with all these assumptions, engaging them in conversation. If they can get away without doing it and they can get their money without doing it, why would they do it, right? So if they can just speak louder than anybody else and get the money, why should they spend time, So I think it's very important. So that's the first thing. I think that the bottom-up only works if you full endorsement of your leadership. The second thing is that you have to train the teams a lot. It's a big commitment on training, and it's constant training. And this is something we don't allocate enough resources to be honest. We've done a big training 2 years ago. We hadn't done it for 3 years. With the turnaround in the teams and everything else, if you don't train people inside your organization, they come with their own tools and their own assumptions. They don't know these things exist, so they do it their way. And then when you come with your template or your process, they've already done it in different ways. So then, it's complicated to catch up. Trust is paramount. And I've seen so many times when a decision was made in the portfolio, they saw us as they could see us as a black box. And I've had people come in my office and say, Ivan, you killed my project, despite the fact it's a bottom up. But because we lacked transparency, we didn't communicate enough, they believed that I had done something in the black box that killed their project, when in reality, It was their own assumptions that I just use, and their project didn't look good enough, or strategically didn't fit. Or so I think transparency and trust together are critical in the bottom-up process. You cannot operate if you work with people who don't trust you. Calibration, I think calibration, I should have put it in bold. I think that's the most important piece when in a bottom-up process, because they're going to give you their views, and you always have biases. And surprisingly, some teams are conservative, some teams are very optimistic. They have the best project in the world, right? And others are very pessimistic, actually. You would think everybody's optimistic. That's not the case. So you need to calibrate. You need to calibrate TPP, you need to calibrate POS, you need to calibrate forecast, you need to calibrate R&D cost, make sure all these things match. And quality control. Sometimes some people don't like to spend time doing a budget, so you have to support them and make sure they did everything the right way. Alignment with other processes, as I said, and I spent quite a bit of time explaining that we're totally in sync with the strategy and finance timelines, because you don't want to duplicate. In the past, we had duplication. We were doing portfolio management, that was a set of numbers, and then there was strategy, that was another set of numbers, and then we had budgeting, that was another set of numbers. And so people would do the exercise 3 times. Now we make a point, we only use one set of numbers from the beginning to the end. We align the timelines, we only do it once. We need to be close to the teams on a daily basis. So we need to go the extra mile with the teams. We need to spend a lot of time holding their hands on things that are not really portfolio management things, to be honest. When they need to do a decision tree, for example, on the decision for a better development plan. So we help them by coming and bringing our own competencies and sitting at the table and using our tools to their benefit without any immediate benefits for our own teams. So you have to be with them, in it with them on a daily basis. Communication back to teams, as I said, in the past, we missed a little bit the target there, communicating back to the teams. And so we published what we call the asset booklet, which is a pipeline book. It used to be a book of 950 pages. We called it the Bible, but that's a very thick book. Now it's much thinner. We put the major information, so people see that their information is used in a way, and they get the feedback, and they get these documents back, and they know that the CEO has it on his desk and uses it. We've posted on it, so they're happy. We do digital, and then roadmaps, which are the scenarios. So publishing the scenarios, that's something we want to do this year. HQDP, which is high quality data packages for decision making. We've put together very short packages of information that we're responsible for to make decisions, where we summarize what's important to know about the project before you make a decision. And then make sure that we always keep in mind what's in it for me, for the guys we work with, we ask anything for. If there's nothing for him, it's unlikely they're going to collaborate. And we always, as I said, we close to the teams on a daily basis. We also make the best case for the investments in an unbiased way, but always go to the teams, and we always go to the teams and we say, guys, we're going to help you present the best possible face in front of the decision makers. Because my goal is that they present the best package possible. No lie, no bias, unbiased, but the best package you can do. Most detailed, best quality. So that the portfolio management is not the enemy, it's the partner. And I think it's critical in a bottom up, it's critical. When you audit, you can be the worst person in the world because you just do it. But when you're bottom up, if you're not partnering and if you're the enemy, you go nowhere. Preserve independence. So that's because if you don't preserve independence, you're in the middle of this politics and you're dead, to be honest, because garbage in, garbage out. And then 9 and 10 is about digitization. We spend a lot of time. Why? Because we spent in the past a lot of time collecting data. I think it's not where we add value. We add value at analyzing the data and extracting the so what. And we are much more appreciated when we communicate the so what to the teams, to top management, and to everybody, than when we collect data. That be a data collector, that's not a very value-added job. And so we've automatized a lot of the collection of data, making it simpler and more straightforward. And then the last one I want to touch on is include AI and machine learning. We've tried a few things. There are not too many fields of application in portfolio management, but there's one we've been toying with, which is probability of technical and regulatory success. I think there's enough data to do a good job with that. If you do it well, there are not too many companies that do it well. And a lot pretend they have machine learning for PTRS. There's just a few in the industry today that do a good job at it. So these were my top learnings here that I wanted to share with you.
Ivan, this is a really great list. In fact, if we could just encapsulate this list and put it in gold and just send it out to the world, I think this alone would be just a tremendous set of learnings. I've got some great things I'd like to jump into real quickly.
Yes, sure, of course.
While we have a few minutes, we just got a few minutes left. Please keep the questions coming. Those that have questions, we'll get to those in a moment. But I have most of the practitioners that I've come across that work in this practice and in portfolio program management, there's a lot of practitioners that come from the sciences. Maybe they started their career either in engineering or as a scientist. And they tend to just move into this space because it suits their career, it suits their personality, it suits kind of their natural skills. But yeah. I have found over the years that I think if there were a subject, a major that you could take at the university that focused on project management, portfolio management, it wouldn't be on the scientific side of the university campus. It would likely be on the psychological side of campus, more aligned with economics and psychology, the social sciences, for some of the reasons that you just brought up. So, for example, the top management endorsement. If you could just answer just real quickly, when you started on this journey, going back or when the organization started on this journey, and I don't know if you've got the detailed data behind it, but when management said, okay, we want to move more towards bottom up and move away from tops down, I'm sure there was some thought as to what the business case was, and I imagine the business case was around improving the value of the portfolio, trying to get more innovation into the portfolio. That's usually what the drive is. Yeah. Has there been any look back over I think this process has been in place, what, 9 or 10 years, you said?
Correct, correct. Mm-hmm.
Has there been any look back to see, what has the bottoms up approach, how has that helped the value of the portfolio? Any comments on that?
So we monitor the R&D productivity. I wouldn't allocate. No, I have to say we've never measured our value. It's probably a mistake. We benchmark ourselves a lot. There are different services. You can find them. So we benchmark ourselves on a regular basis to see where we have weaknesses and where we have strengths. Continue to build on the strengths and improve and fill the gaps in the weaknesses. We've never really measured our impact, to be honest. We should. That would be a smart political move. We've never done it. So if somebody has done it and wants to talk one of these days about it, I want to listen, because that's an area where I love measuring things, but I've never really measured the impact. What we measure is the R&D productivity, the pipeline value, and all these things like everybody else. And we look at the return on investment, the return ratios, and all these kind of things on an annual basis, on a 5-year basis, whatever you have. We have tons of measurements, but the value of the portfolio management team, not so much. The only thing I can say is that it was a team of 20 and now it's a team of 5. So just that, by reducing by 1 to 1/4 of what the cost was of portfolio management, I think. The other thing is that we send surveys on a regular basis to evaluate ourselves and how people appreciate what we do and where we can improve and what we should do. I think the scores have been pretty good over the years, so that's the way we've been by iterations, try to improve the way we collaborate and we work. So and usually you get the same answers. They don't want templates. They don't want burden. They want you to do all the stuff without asking, but they don't want audits. So they want bottom up, but they don't want too much work to do. So that's where we are. not much measurement, no, unfortunately.
But I'm guessing, based on the fact that it's still embraced and it's been continued to refined over the years, I think the executive leadership obviously sees value in it. They see that it's an upside, general upside for the company.
And to be honest, we've had ups and downs. The team has had ups and downs, and it depends also on the top management. So you need to adjust your style and what you communicate to who you're talking to. And depending on which CEO you have or CFO and whatsoever, we spent some CEOs, and we've had that many CEOs, but the crowd you're talking to, for example, top line, you always get everybody's attention. Profit, you always get everybody's attention. When you start talking about risk, you lose half of the room. And when you talk about and most of the time you talk about uncertainty, you're the only one who's passionate about it.
Right. Yes.
And my biggest win is when I had the head of strategy a couple of years ago who came to me and said, Ivan, we need to talk more about uncertainty. And I was like, oh my God. And it's only, and the only reason is because it was hurting that we didn't build in enough information to the CEO about the uncertainty of our pipeline, and we got burnt. All of a sudden he said, oh shoot, I would have talked about the level of uncertainty that was in the pipeline. So the swing factors much more. I wouldn't be in that position that my CEO would come to me and say, hey, you didn't warn me about that, swing possibility, and all of a sudden then people are interested in Monte Carlo and all of these kind of tools and so on and so forth. But yeah.
That's an excellent story. Yes, I'm sure many of us can share stories that resonates with all of us. That it's very easy to talk about hard numbers because people just want to know how much money are we going to make next year. That's all I want to know. How much money? Just give me a number. Just give me a number.
Exactly.
But you should be focusing on the uncertainty. That what's the upside and downside.
I agree, but
right. That's what's burned us in the past.
So now I'm getting a lot of traction around that theme. But I think it's because they got burned before. And so now I'm spending much more time on uncertainty, the range of possibilities, the scenarios, as we talked about, all this, which is cool. This is where I think we add more value. But if they're not ready to listen to that, you need to adjust your message based on what you're there to render a service to a customer who's usually your top management.
Right.
So
that's an awesome critical learning right there. Is you take advantage of when people get burned, when things when there's a blow up.
Usually,
that's your opportunity to move in with some process improvement, right? Because only with if everything goes well, people say what do we need? Why do we need to do more work? Everything's going fine, right? Why fix it?
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
One last question before we go here. So. If you talked about how over time the team has gone from 20 down to 5. It sounds like there's been some streamlining in this governance process. We had a good question from Joe in terms of the governance model as it's evolved over time. Can you speak a little bit more about that in terms of the learnings of streamlining as you've gone?
So we went directly from 20 to 5. It was part of a big initiative at Merck that they called Fit for 2018. And so in 2012, there was, a little bit before that, there was this new CEO, and he looked at the margins of the company and said, the cost is too high, we need to reduce the cost. So that was a cost reduction initiative. That cost reduction initiative included looking at portfolio with 20 people. You have to go with 5 now, find a solution. So the solution actually, the intent was to reduce the cost from 20 to 5, and then the solution was, okay, then go from top down to bottom up, and then ask the teams to provide the assumptions and so on and so forth. So that was that. But once we got there, we said, okay, how can we maximize the use of the 5 people? And this is why point 9 and 10, for example, are so important, because the more time you spend collecting and creating these assumptions for the other team, then you don't have time for analytics, you don't have time for communication, you don't have time for anything else. So that's why you need find a way to get rid of the low value activities of your team of 5 and focus much more on the high value activities of the team of 5, and find a way to outsource these to different parts of the organization.
Yes, right. So it's kind of forced upon you, and it sounds like
it was forced. Absolutely, totally.
Awesome.
No, absolutely, But we've been stable with that.
Yes, that's the nature of our business, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So we are at the top of the hour.
Yep.
Ivan, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for your slides and your learnings. I think it's been a really engaging discussion. I don't want to go too far over time because I know people have lots of commitments. Katie, would you like to close us out here?
I would just love to say thank you because this was incredible. And I can actually see a comment from Anusha. It says, incredible presentation. Thank you both so much. I feel like we will lose people because it's the top of the hour, as you said.
Yep.
There might be some people who have questions, but I would say if I can kindly suggest just to keep everyone.
Send me the questions. I'm happy to give a written answer and then you post it.
Yeah, exactly. Or feel free to, to post it publicly, and maybe other professionals can answer differently as well. I know that different views, different opinions, everything is.
That's an exchange. I always say, yeah.
Of course.
The value of it. Yeah.
Exactly. But, I would love to just take a little moment to thank Ivan for accepting the invitation. I didn't have much time to say anything about Ivan, but I mean, come on, everyone knows Ivan, everyone knows Mark. So I'm not gonna bore you with that.
You're too kind.
I feel like, I'm so honored to host professionals like you both and other people who actually, who accepted my invitation to the PPM Summer Talks as well. And it's a great honor to host people like you. So thank you again so much. Mark, you're a wonderful moderator.
Absolutely,
I have things to learn from you.
Thank you.
The esteemed speakers we have make it easy. So Ivan, good job. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
and we have a session tomorrow, so feel free to join us. And the presentation is being recorded from today. I will post it online on our YouTube channel, so feel free to rewatch it and share it. And any questions you might have, feel free to send it to me through the platform, or contact directly Mark or Ivan. They're on LinkedIn. I can make it easier. So anything you've got, I have you covered. So thank you again so much. And this was wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks. Bye-bye.